Quickly, I just wanted to share this particular radio. This is an RCA 96T2 that has been sitting on my shelf, and I have done some work on it. I haven't documented it as far as videos or anything. And I was in contact with Don, Restore Old Radios, right after he was making some knobs. And if most everybody that's on my channel, subscribe to my channel, and knows who Don and Restore Old Radios is, and if you're not, then you need to check him out. But he was making knobs, and he's made belts, and he's made rubber supports and grommets and things like that. He explores all sorts of construction and reconstruction and reproduction of parts of radios, winds, coils, you name it. And very smart individual. And I was talking to him on the phone and by email and whatever, and he made mention, well, I made mention that this project is kind of held up because of the push buttons. The push buttons, the reproductions are $140 for 8. And he volunteered. He said, well, just send them to me. And he said, let me see what I can do. I'm not going to promise you anything. I said, okay. So I sent them, and I warned him. I said, now these are not the easiest in the world. You know, he said, well, he said, I like a challenge. So I sent them. And he sent them back, and I want you to look at these. Now, these right here, labels go in for the programming of them. But he made those, didn't charge me anything, just did it for the excitement and the thrill of it. And I don't know if he's going to do a series or a video on it. I've encouraged him to show how he done it. He used a 2-part mold on this, and so that is something that I eventually want to get into, is reproducing the knobs. But one of the other things that I really want to get into is rewinding coils and transformers and things like that. But anyway, I just got to thank Don. He is a super guy, very knowledgeable, and I really just want to say thank you, Don. And you just don't know how much I appreciate these knobs, and if I can do anything for you, you just let me know. Well, the foam has cured, and it actually expanded a little bit too much, and I had to cut some of it out so that the cable would line up and be in alignment with the hole that's coming through the chassis. But you know, I've seen some of Buzz 1151's videos where he was expecting a $100 bill to jump out of these cans, and I've seen him put a $1 bill in some of his. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to put a $2 bill in mine. So one day someone will open it up and they'll find this $2 bill and they'll say, huh, it's fake money. But that'll hold it in place, and my fear is that these will break when I try to bend these back over. So just keep your fingers crossed, and hopefully they don't break. If they do, I'll have to come up with some alternative method to attach this to the chassis. Here's a shot of the chassis. You can see I've painted the transformer, and here's some of the wires that that'll go to the dial light, and these will go to 2 of the terminals on the speaker. So as you can see, it cleaned up fairly nice. So let's flip this over and get those cans back in there. Try to use this little hammer There's one. Two. Wires keep getting in the way. Sorry if I'm getting in your way there. All right, the capacitor can is back on. Now we've got plenty of wires. I may end up having to trim this so that I can split these wires, make them lay flatter in the chassis. Let's see if we can get the transformer can in. What I'm going to do with these is I'm going to use a punch, make sure it's down good, because it's getting in close proximity to the tube sockets. And the last thing I need to do is break a tube socket. I can get one. There's that one. Hopefully you can see this without me being in the way, but I think you're getting the idea. This is going to be the hard one right here. Without, should be all right. If I can just keep it on there. All right, get you a close-up of it. There's the transformer can and the wires coming out there, and the RF bypass capacitor can with all of them. There they are up on top side. Doesn't look that bad. Now comes the tedious part of taking each terminal, each wire, and putting it back together. Sorting out these wires so that we can make the terminations of it. We'll start with the transformer can. The blue-black wire, that will go to terminal 9 on the resistor board, if you'll remember that. The black one itself goes to ground, which is also terminal 3 of that board. The red-black stripe one, goes to terminal 14 of that board. So these will go to this board here. The two red wires, that's the primary of the output transformer. They will go to pins 2 of the, that's the plates of the 45 tubes, which is here, and pin 2 would be, that's pin 1, pin 2, so one will go here, pin 1, pin 2, the other one will go here, so both those are in line to do that. The blue wires will go to the grids of the 45s, which is pin 3, 1, 2, 3. So one will go here, 1, 2, 3. The other one will go here. So that'll be lined up there, and we'll dress those up as time comes. The other black wire, the large one that I use the larger wire. It goes through the chassis and comes up and mates with these two, which goes to the speaker connections up front. The green wire goes to terminal 14 of this board, which is also B+, and then the yellow wire will go to terminal 12 of that board, which goes to the RF choke that goes to the plate of the 27. So that takes care of all these wires from this transformer. So let me do some dressing up, cutting, soldering, and then we'll go and we'll start working on this particular one. Okay, I've got the screen and the plates wired up from the transformer. We know that these will go to that board. What I'm trying to do is figure out the levels that I'm going to have to do. I know for a fact that the IF has some connections on these plates here, so there's not going to be much way to mount those or to solder that after they're mounted. So I'm going to have to go and make all these connections before I go with the IFs, and then I'll come back and do the connections on the boards. So I'm going to go ahead and segregate these. I know this one has got to go up into here, this one has got to go up into here, and so I'll look at my diagram, my wiring diagram, and check every connection and every pin to make sure that I've got it. Then once I get that done, I'll go back and I'll check it again and again and again, because this is not the time to get in a hurry or to skip around. Just take one pin, one wire at a time, and terminate it, and make sure you've got all the other terminations to it. Okay, I've got the resistor board back into the chassis, and so I've decided to go ahead and make these connections onto this board before I put the IF cans in. Then I'll put the coil back in. Just a quick update. I've got the majority of the wires connected to the resistor board. I haven't soldered the wires that goes to the B+. I've got 3 more wires, 2 from the IFs and one that goes to the filter capacitors. That's got to go to this terminal here. So I'm waiting to make sure that I get them all together and get them all soldered in one good solder, instead of trying to tack and tack and tack on top of each other. I think the next thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and put the coil back in, then work on the IF cans. Right now I've got a fuse block. Gluing to it is it was difficult to even find a place that might even could put one, but that's the AC connects in this area, so I felt like this would probably be one of the best places. The AC line comes in here, so I think that would probably be the best place for it. Still have to mount the tuning condenser and the antenna coil on top, along with the Mershon capacitors, and then check the connections, double check the connections, quadruple, trip, just make sure all the connections are correct, and trace all the wires and make sure that's going to be the time consuming thing. So I thought I'd just give you an update. Here's something, I want to show you something that I almost messed up. I ordered these, and I won't tell you where I ordered them. It was from a place that I trust quite a bit. And this is is a fuse block for the 3AG fuses that I use quite a bit. And I was preparing it to glue it to my chassis, and roughing it up and roughing the chassis up to get ready for it. And then I just happened to notice something. Do you see any problem with this at all? The brads that hold the fuse in goes all the way through the board, and if you were to mount this to the chassis, would that not short out? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something on this. But I thought that was interesting. So anyway, that's it for right now. And when I get all the rest of this stuff put together, I'll give you some more updates. Well, just another little update. I went ahead and put the coils in, and I still haven't connected all the B plus to this terminal. I'm fixing to put the IF cans in, and once I tack those in, then I should be able to finish up all the B plus connections here, and then we'll start going to the tuning condenser, the antenna coil, put in the Mershons, and do that double, triple, quadruple check again, and hopefully we'll be ready to fire it up. And that is not a real good term to use when you're turning on a radio. Let me get back to it. Got the IF cans in, and all the B pluses are soldered in. Check some of the solder joints to make sure they're all good, but I will go back and check those again. Let's go ahead and put this tuner condenser back in and see how it looks and get it connected up. I believe here's the two that goes on the bottom, and then the other one is on the antenna coil that's on the top. Tuning condensers in and soldered in, except for the top. I haven't put the coil in on top, and we'll flip over to the top. We'll do the Mershon capacitors and the antenna coil. Always remember, when you're dealing with your tuning condenser, to keep it fully meshed when you're handling it. Otherwise, you could end up with some serious issues by bending those plates. But we're getting closer. We have to get the I've put the fuse block in here. We'll have to put the power cord, the power switch, the antenna coil, the caps to go on the tubes, and verify, and then we'll be ready to try it. So let me get started on the top side. Well, there is almost everything. I need the dial light, the on-off switch, and the power cord connected, and then we'll be ready. So very, very close. I've went through the chassis and verified that the solder connections are made. Now, did I leave a wire loose or eliminated? You know, as you're working with this stuff, wires fall off and you may lose one. I found one in the yard after I went out and did some cleaning. Later I found a wire laying in the yard that was supposed to be in it. So things can happen. So I've gone through that, and I actually did find a wire that was supposed to connect to the volume control to go to the cathode of the 27 tube, the first detector. So I've put that on. Now, what I've decided to do, since I've gone through it, and I will go through it again, but this particular model and schematic shows continuity checks between the chassis and certain points on the radio, and I showed you some of that early on when we were checking some of the coils and things like that. So what I did is I took and I blew up a cheat sheet here to show the resistances and the test points. So I'm going to go through each one of these test points and check the resistance. Now, is that going to tell me, is everything all right? I may have a wire stuck into a connection and it's not soldered. It may be making a connection right this minute, but it may show good on here. But getting something in the ballpark tells me that it will be wired correctly, at least to start. So I'm going to go through this piece by piece and just take my time, highlight it when I get done, and if I run into a problem, then I'll start looking to see why it is wrong. It's just a start, just one of the tools that I plan on using to make sure I've got this thing wired correctly. I'll get us started and I'll show you the technique I'm using. And see, I've already highlighted in green. That means I've already checked it, but I'll go back over it again. The instructions at the top says everything is measured from ground except this particular one, the aerial to the ground. Should be about 40 ohms. So let's check this real quick. This is the that's the two wires coming out the back. So we'll clip that on, and let's see if we can get a meter in line here, and we'll check that. We're reading 40.6, so that's good. Now the next test is, let me clip that to ground. I don't know if you guys experience the same thing, but I can tie many knots using meter leads. So we're going to check the RF control grid, which is pin 35, which to ground, which is the cap that goes onto the tube. Now the instructions said all the tubes are disconnected, the field coil is disconnected, and of course the plug's disconnected. I have not put the plug on yet, but so we're going to go, already got it hooked to ground. We're going to go to the cap, which will be the one on the on the antenna coil, and we will check that, and we're reading right at 7 ohms. And before it's supposed to read 5 ohms. Now I'm getting a little over 6.5 or so. So that's good. Now the next one is the RF cathode. The RF cathode, which in this case is pin 4. I went ahead and made me a cheat sheet here from the schematic. Now this says VE min. That's the voltage at the minimum. I don't know what the E stands for. So let's turn the volume down to minimum, and we should see on pin 4 3950 ohms. Now this is the tube that we're looking for. Let me get you a close-up of that tube. Here's a close-up of the socket on the top side. It's a 5-pin socket, and this pin is out away from everything else. So that's pin 3. Okay. Directly across from that is a divider. Right in the center, that is the divider between pins 1 and 5. Okay. Now remember, if you're looking under the bottom, we go clockwise. Well, we're on top, so that means you got to go counterclockwise. So here's the divider between 1 and 5. So that makes this pin 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're going to take some resisting measurements on the top using these pins. It gets confusing because it's upside down or it's backwards. But on the bottom it's clockwise. On the top it's counterclockwise. What we're going to check now is the RF cathode. Now we have to have the volume at a minimum, which let's check that. It is set at minimum, and to check the RF cathode to ground, that's pin 4, and we should get about 3950, 3.9K or so. So pin 4, remember what we said. Here's the divider between 1 and 5. This is pin 1. We got to go counterclockwise because we're on top. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll do the check here, and we get about 4.1K, which is about right. Now the next check is the cathode with the volume at its minimum or its maximum. So let's go ahead and just turn the volume up, and we're getting about 214 ohms. In the previous video, if you'll remember, I was checking, and the reason we should be checking 150 ohms is this particular resistor. When we had it at minimum, we had all these together, and if you'll add the 38, the potentiometer is 3800 ohms plus the 150, that should give us 3950 for the total, and that's what we were measuring with it at the minimum. Then when we turn it to maximum, what we should be seeing is just this resistor. And if you'll recall, I did the check at 208 ohms, and I said I that's just padding that. I didn't think that I was going to change that resistor, and I still didn't. So that reading is correct. So I feel comfortable that that part of it is wired up correctly. We're going to go over one more. We're going to check the RF plate circuit on the 35 tube, which is pin 2 on the socket, and the circuit should read to ground 22,508 ohms. And let's check that out. We got to go to pin 2. So if you'll remember, this is pin 3. This would be pin 2 if we were looking from the bottom. Everything is opposite, so this will be pin 2 over here. So let's stick it in there. And what we're reading is 27,222. Should be getting 22,508. Now, this particular circuit has the volume control in it, so let's run the volume control up to maximum, which will reduce the resistance in that potentiometer, and we're coming down closer to the 22,000. So we're 23,350. I believe that's about what I got when I initially checked it. Now you remember I put the 15,000 ohm resistor in instead of the 14,300 ohm. The 150 ohm is reading 208, and the tolerances of the other ones also. So that may be where the discrepancy's at. So let's see where we're getting the 22,508. Guaranteed this is all calculated stuff, but let me show you the circuit that we're actually testing when we are sticking this in pin 2, and I feel pretty good that the circuit is wired correctly and the components are good in that particular part. And I'm really glad that this all this documentation has these resistance checks. So we're checking the 35 tube in the RF section. We start with the plate, which is pin 2. It's going through this coil, which is reading 58 ohms. So there's 58 of your 22,508 ohms. Okay, so the circuit is going to go down. Now we're going to ground. It'll go down to here. It'll go over, and it'll go through this 14,300 ohm resistor. Well, with that makes it 14,300 ohms plus the 58 is 15,358. So it comes up, it goes over, goes through the 8,000 ohm resistor, which will now make it 22,358 ohms. It comes over, and then to come to the ground, it's got to go through that 150 ohm resistor, and we've already said that this potentiometer, we've maxed it out, and it's virtually zero. So you add 150 ohms to that 22,358, and that equals 22,508 ohms, which is what that is supposed to be. So I feel good that that circuit is complete and all the components are good. So that's the last one I'm going to do on camera. I'll run through the rest of these, and if I find any discrepancies in these, I'll come back, I'll film it, show you what the problem was, and hopefully I haven't made any mistakes, but that's why we're here testing it. So let me go ahead and run the gambit here and see what we can come up with. I think we're ready to fire it up. I went through the checklist, and You know, I showed you that I left the wire off. I found that through that. So let's see how that works. Let me get a sup of coffee before we get started. Got the antenna hooked up, got a ground hooked up. I've got a temporary cable. I don't have the fuse wired in, or the switch, or the regular cable, but my metering circuit is fused at 1 amp. So I think I'm safe there. Got it through the isolation transformer. I'm going to bring it up without the rectifier, so there will be no high voltage, and we will just go through it and see what it looks like. All right, so variax down, wire and hole. Let's bring it up to about 50 volts since we're not having to worry about the capacitors at this point. Looks like about 200 milliamps at this point. That's about right. Let's go on up a little bit more. Let's go to 75. We're looking at, I don't know if you can see the meters or not, 300 mils. Is that about right? Yeah, about 300 mil. And we'll go on up to 100 or so. And then there is about just south of 400 milliamps, and we'll go on up to 120. And just north of 400 mils. No crackling. Got lights. Let's see, tubes. I can see the filaments in the tubes. Sounds like life is good so far. All right, let's ramp it back down, and we'll put the 80 rectifier in and see what we've got. I don't know, you guys, I don't always get nervous, but during all this, I have had times where things have fell off the table about the middle of it. It startles me, or what have you. So we're dealing with some high voltage or so. We may get around to checking that in a few minutes. Okay, it's down. Let's turn it on. Let's go up to 25 volts. Let it set a few seconds or so. Just shy of 200 mils. Okay, let's bring it on up a little bit more. Okay, there's about 50 or so. Getting our light again, which we got that earlier. Let's see. There's no doubt in my mind that we're going to have to do a serious alignment on this radio. Thinking back, I can always think back of things I should have done. And I'd seen this in a video that Restore Old Radios had done, when he took a tuning condenser apart, and it had the trimmer caps on it with the mica sheets in it, and he measured the capacitance of it before he took them out, and then when he put them in, he did it again, so to get it in the ballpark. And I'd failed to do that, and I should have done that. But hindsight's always 20/20. Okay, still setting good. We set that at 50 volts for a little while. Now we're a little north of 400 milliamps. Now this one pulled about I believe it's a little over 800 milliamps before I shut it down. So another sip of coffee to settle the nerves. And let's see. I told you things fall in the floor every time. Did it hit my camera and knock it off? I think we're good. Okay, let's go on up to 100 volts. Should be getting sound. Where are we at on this? That's about 500 milliamps. Do I hear anything? I couldn't hear it if I had to. Let me go ahead at this point to go ahead and dial 91 on my phone just to get ready to match the last digit. I don't hear any static, and it may be so far out of alignment, I don't know. Let's take it to 110 for now. I hear a little bit hum. Sorry about that. Whatever fell in the floor hung up on the camera. Okay, let's see. I hear hum. I hear popping. Oh. Whoop. Little Waylon Jennings going there, huh? Yeah, the volume's all the way up, so I don't know. Like I say, I think the radio's going to have to be aligned. Let's see what we got going. See if there's any more out there. Picks up one. All right, check that out. That's the local station. I'm not sure. I've gotten 2 stations so far without an alignment. But I'm doubting anything else, because there's just not a whole lot, and I'm in the basement, not without an alignment. Right inside here is the antenna coil or trimmer. Let me go off camera a little bit and I'll see if I can't trim some of this stuff up. But no smoke, and it's working. And it's running at just shy of 700 milliamps. So, but let's go on up to that's 120 volts. Okay, I think I can do some adjustments on this. I have no alignment procedure on this. I'm going to look around and see if I can find something. But all right, I think we've successfully put it back together. And there may be some flaws in there that we're going to have to work the bugs out, but I'm happy with it. All right, guys, I tried to do the IF alignment on this, but my signal generator went out. But before it went out, I was able to see or hear a 175 kilocycle signal, and I tweaked the IFs and got them really close, and so I did the rest of all this by ear. I'm going to have to redo it again and make sure I get in, get it in the ballpark. It sounds pretty good right now. I'll have to borrow a friend's of mine, or possibly tear into this one and see what's wrong with it. But I still haven't gotten the permanent cord on it, the on-off switch, or the fuse connected. I put the dial on simply because I wanted to work on this grommet. I built a grommet, a friction drive grommet. I used 2 grommets and glued them together. Pay no attention to the knob. These are not the droids you're looking for. This is just a knob I found in the drawer just to make it easier to turn. It slips. Tomorrow I'm going to try to glue it onto the shaft if I can't find a reproduction. I have not been able to find any at all. It's night time. It's 10:40 at night, and let's just kind of demonstrate the radio, and then the next series is going to be having it all buttoned together and put it all back together, and maybe the final one, if everything pans out, I'm going to burn this thing in for several hours, maybe a day or two, just to make sure it's working. So let's just check this out, see what you think. Awful quiet, isn't it? And this does not have AVC, so you've pretty much got to man the volume control. I've been listening to WSM Nashville. And should be getting along somewhere in here. I believe that's a WSM right there. But I'll get a good station on. I'll show you the tone control, how it works.
Know is when you call the alarm company and you say, hey, I'm considering going to wireless monitoring. Is my box capable of that or not? And what's your charge for that?
There's the bass.
With the house, which was in mid-2000, or like 2007.
2007, it will likely have the capability.
And the treble. So it seems to work pretty good. I'm getting close to the local station, so I'm going to have to man the...
Great. I'm excited to talk to you, man. It's been a while. We got you during that Super Regional.
This is some sports. I believe this is 89. WLS. Okay, turn it down, getting ready. Don't want the copyright police to come get me.
Medications for just $1.99 in most locations.
A little BG action there. So still got a little more work to do on it, guys, but I'm really pleased it went back together the way it did. So we're gonna end this video. Like I say, the next part, I'll have everything completed and put back in the cabinet and you see the final product. So, from Larry, from the hills of Tennessee, thanks for watching.